Today, we're going to dig into a really interesting paradox. What if the real secret to success is actually paved with failure? We're going to find the answer by connecting one of the greatest athletes of all time with a field you would never, ever expect. So let's jump right in. I know, right? It sounds like the beginning of a weird joke. On one hand, you've got this quiet, careful academic world of research, and on the other, you have this explosive, raw physical talent. But believe it or not, there is a deep connection between them, and it unlocks a huge lesson about how we achieve anything. And there it is. That's the key. A historian knows their first write-up is going to be full of problems, and an athlete knows their first try is going to be clumsy. They both get that real success only comes from revising, from iterating, from refusing to let that first attempt be the final word. So let's start right there with this idea of a first draft, because this is where so many of us get stuck, right? Our first shot at something just doesn't live up to that amazing vision we had in our minds. Think about it like this. When a historian starts digging into the past, they don't have all the answers. They have what's called a working hypothesis. Basically, their best guess, their initial idea. It's not a fact yet. It's just a starting point that needs to be tested. Well, our own goals and what we believe we're capable of, they're exactly the same. They're just the first draft of who we might become. Now, here's where it gets really juicy. There's this mental trap that good historians learn to avoid. It's called premature cognitive commitment. I know, it's a mouthful, but it's a huge idea. It basically means deciding on your conclusion way too early. In our lives, this is that moment when we hit one setback and immediately decide, well, that's it, I failed, or I'm just not cut out for this. We've already committed to the verdict before we've even seen all the evidence. And that brings us right back to Michael Jordan. When he got cut from his high school team, man, it would have been so easy for him to just commit to the idea that he wasn't going to be a great basketball player. That was the first draft of his story, right? But as we all know, he absolutely refused to let that be the final version. You know, this quote from the writer Samuel Butler really captures this idea perfectly. You can't just force the story to be what you want it to be. You have to let the journey, with all its messy twists and turns, show you what it's really about. Which conveniently leads us right to our next section. So, once a historian has their working hypothesis, their next job is to go out and gather evidence, what they call primary sources. For us, well, that evidence often comes from a much more painful place. This quote from Jordan is just legendary. Listen to what he's doing here. He isn't just admitting he fails, he's counting them. He's laying out this entire library of his own mistakes, and this is where our whole metaphor just springs to life. I mean, just look at that number. Over 9,000 missed shots. Every single one of those could have been a little verdict, another piece of proof that he failed. But that's not how he saw them. Not at all. He saw them as primary sources. Every single miss, every lost game, was a raw piece of data. It was direct evidence from the field, which for him was the basketball court, telling him exactly what went wrong and precisely what he needed to adjust for the next time. So this is the whole game right here. It's this incredible shift in your mindset. See, most of us see failure as a verdict. It's like a judge's gavel slamming down, telling us it's over, you're done. But the champion, just like the great historian, sees failure as data. It is not an endpoint. It is just information that makes the next draft better. Okay, so you've gathered all this painful data from your primary sources, your failures. So what's next? Well, this is the most critical step of all, actually using that data to rewrite your story. A bad historian, when they find evidence that contradicts their big idea, they just pretend it doesn't exist. They throw it out. But a great historian looks at that exact same evidence and says, I guess my idea must be wrong. They don't change the evidence, they change their thesis. And that is exactly how we should be thinking about our own growth. The failure isn't the problem, our first approach was. We can actually break this down into a simple process. Let's call it the researcher's method for growth. Number 1, form a hypothesis. That's you setting a goal. 2, gather primary data. That's you trying. And yeah, failing. 3, analyze the evidence. You got to reflect on what went wrong. And number 4, revise your thesis. You adapt your approach and you go again. It's a loop, you see, not a straight line. And this brings us back to another one of Jordan's core beliefs. That pain of missing the shot or losing the game, that is the teacher. It's the discomfort that forces you to really look at the evidence and change what you're doing. Without that pain, you don't get the gift of learning. And now we've arrived at the final crucial piece that ties this whole thing together. Because just learning from failure, well, that's only half the battle. To even start this whole process, you've got to check your ego at the door. You have to be humble enough to just admit that your first draft was flawed, that your working hypothesis was wrong. Your ego is what screams that failure is a verdict. It's humility that allows you to see it as data. But here's the real kicker. Learning is not enough. After you've analyzed the data, after you've revised your plan, you still have to get back out on the court and take another shot. And that takes perseverance. It's that grit, that sheer determination to keep writing new drafts, even when you were just exhausted from all the failed attempts. I mean, this quote just has it all, doesn't it? The failure isn't missing the shot. The real failure, the only one that truly counts, is not having the courage to try again after you've learned your lesson. The real failure is just giving up on the whole process of revision. So let's wrap this up. What are the big takeaways here? First, you got to reframe failure. It is not a verdict, it's just valuable data. Second, remember that your first attempt is only a first draft. It's not your final story. Third, use your setbacks to revise your approach. Don't let them make you abandon the goal. And finally, get this. You have to check your ego to learn, but you absolutely need perseverance to grow. And in the end, that's the principle, isn't it? Talent can write a pretty good first draft. Humility can help you edit it, but it's only perseverance that has the power to keep you rewriting again and again and again until that rough draft finally becomes a masterpiece.